I want to bring in now to the conversation MS Now legal reporter Lisa Rubin and Ty Cobb, former White House lawyer during the first Trump administration. So, Lisa, let's start with you setting the scene here and what we know.
I think, Antonia, your intro did a really good job of sort of encapsulating the both and aspects of this investigation, which, as we understand it, isn't just one investigation. It's potentially multiple investigations, according to public reporting. And you mentioned that Gavin Newsom's former chief of staff, a woman named Dana Williamson, pled guilty last month to 3 felonies, one of which was lying to investigators about how she used information that she obtained during her service in Newsom's office. That doesn't mean, of course, that there is any there to these investigations involving Governor Newsom and his wife, Jennifer Siebel Newsom. However, we also understand that in addition to whatever pressure was put on Dana Williamson to turn over information relating to Governor Newsom and his wife, in recent days, according to the governor, and I want to emphasize that, recent days, friends and associates of the governor and his wife have been visited, we understand, by federal investigators. They also believe that financial institutions have received subpoenas for bank records. And apparently the questions that they are asking are about Jennifer Siebel Newsom and her involvement with 2 nonprofits, one of which you mentioned, the Representation Project, has to do with documentaries that she has produced independently having to do with gender equity, the latest one of which just premiered at the Tribeca Film Festival. She's also involved in something called the California Partners Project, and Governor Newsom himself has fundraised for that. That's supposed to be a vehicle for doing things associated with his service with governor that he doesn't think the taxpayers should pay for. But we know that he has solicited funds related to that organization. It may be that that organization's tax filings are also under review. But we do know, as you said, Jennifer Siebel Newsom, through a film company she owns, has been paid more than $160,000 in 2024 by the Representation Project, this 501c3. And that appears to be at the center or the heart of what federal investigators are looking at right now.
Ty, given your experience and what you know so far, does this pass the smell test to you?
I think we don't know. I think it's important to remember that, you know, we have these frivolous cases like Comey's Seashell case and the Ed Martin and Bill Pulte generated mortgage cases of people that Trump sought revenge after. But we also have the Bolton case, where there was a lot of angst sort of like this generated when his house was searched. But caution required that because of, previous evidence that had been presented in the court case trying to prevent the publication of his book, that there was some possibility that he had violated the law. And as we now know, he's going to plead guilty. So I think it's important to be cautious here. But let's keep in mind that, Governor Newsom's wife is a highly regarded filmmaker. These are not frivolous activities that she's pursuing. She's an artist and a businesswoman. Taxes are a messy business. The only people in the country who are immune from tax prosecutions are Trump and his family by virtue of the blessings that Todd Blanche recently gave him. So I think, we have to sort of wait this out. But at the same time, I do believe that Newsom did the right thing to come forward, mention this, make it clear that he's not afraid, and tell Trump to come after him and not after his wife.
Well, Ty, I wonder if you can expand on that a little bit for me, how people, as they watch this unfold in the coming days and weeks, how they are to separate a legitimate fact-finding mission and investigation from what the governor has described as a fishing expedition.
Certainly. I do think to the extent that we do see subpoenas that have been issued, that would suggest that there may have been probable cause to pursue some of these things. We don't really know for sure yet that there actually are subpoenas. We've heard that that's the case. Unlike every one of these other revenge prosecutions, the Justice Department and Kash Patel have been, quiet. They haven't commented on this. So we really just don't know enough at this stage of the game. But I do think that there will be more to come. And certainly to the extent that there is not more to come, to the extent that we don't learn anything over the ensuing months, it can be assumed that this was merely intended to smear Newsom, smear his wife, and as part of the revenge campaign that we know that Trump is engaged in.
Yeah, Lisa, you both laid out so well that we need to be cautious right now and wait for more information and the facts to come in here. There very well may be legitimate concerns. At the same time, it's hard to ignore the environment here, the way in which this DOJ has operated. We know that Todd Blanche and previously Pam Bondi seem to be acting on a very particular mission. Bill Pulte has in his role in a federal housing agency. And so how are people to process this, knowing that Blanche is trying to, in the view of many experts, sort of perform for an audience of one? How can we separate the political activity that's been happening in the DOJ from an investigation of someone we know is the president's political rival?
I'm not sure, Antonia, that we can, but I want to dispute something that you said just briefly. I'm not sure that Blanche is necessarily performing for an audience of one anymore. He's performing for an audience of 100, in that the United States Senate is going to have to confirm him at some point if he wants to take the permanent post. And that makes this all the more complex for Todd Blanche. He has to please the president and continue to please the president, but he will be facing some tough questions, even from some Republican senators, particularly those who will be termed out of office because they lost their primaries or they're voluntarily retiring.
Are we hearing from them already?
Well, not necessarily about this, but the Tillises and Cornyns of the world, they may have some questions about why it is just to go after Jennifer Siebel Newsom and Gavin Newsom like this.